Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to another edition of Jazz Talk. Today on our show, we are joined by a jazz legend. This gentleman has been on the scene for over 50 years and has worked with many greats from Tony Bennett to Chet Baker, Joe Henderson, Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, George Clinton, and Patrice Rushen, to name a few. He is a drummer and author. Please welcome to Jazz Talk, the legendary Mr. Mike Clark. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Preston, for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you on, man. I've been listening to you for so long, one of my favorite drummers. And I'm interested in knowing more about your humble beginnings and your background. Now, I understand that you're originally from Sacramento, California.
I was born in Sac, yeah. So, you know who else is from Sac? Is Rufus Reid.
Oh, great bassist. Yeah, Rufus. Yeah. Wow, I didn't know that.
Well, I'm from born in Sacramento, and my father was a drummer, so he always played jazz records, Count Basie, Wynonie, like jump music, Wynonie Harris, Louis Prima, Louis Jordan, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, I said Gene Krupa, Benny Goodman, on and on. And so before I could walk, and he was a party guy. He stopped drumming, so we always had. He was a drummer. Yeah. He stopped playing early, so we always had a drum set, and we always had jazz records. And he also was one of those cats that had his boys over constantly. Constantly, this dude liked to party, right? Death in the '80s, man. Yeah. And so he was always blasting boogie woogie jazz, the stuff he liked. So then when I was 4. Or so the story goes. I remember doing it, but I don't know whether I was 4 or 5 or whatever.
I was about to ask you about that. You were like a child prodigy. I mean, you started when you were young. I was reading that you were sort of sitting in jam sessions or house bands at age 3 or 4. That's crazy. Wow.
More like age 5 through now. And but his passion was going to jazz clubs, and he took, in those days they'd never bothered you could take a kid to a jazz club. Nobody even paid attention to me. Nobody said anything about it. And he would always, so we would go 3 nights a week, all the way through school. When I was a little kid, second grade, all the way through, and then he would always buy the band leader or the band a drink or give somebody $10, let my kid play. Right. And then when we play, I could play. I was an advanced drummer for that age. And so they started asking me to maybe come back and be a little solo guy. And I played on the Jimmy Dean show, that guy that sold Purina sausage or whatever, he's some kind of country. Yeah. But there was a big band, and I'd come out and play Sweet Georgia Brown and take a solo, a bunch of stuff like this. I won't bore you with all of it, but this was my life. And then I was in all the jazz bands at school from 4th grade on. So I could kind of play like Gene Krupa, Lionel Hampton when I was in 3rd. I'm not as good, but I could play that wham, bum, 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 and stuff, tom thing. And I could do that when I was 4. And so everybody was like, yeah, man, that would take me to all the gigs where his musician buddies were playing and have me sit in. So I got band experience as a child,
So you continued, I guess, developing your craft all the way through your teens and 20s. And didn't you have like a group in the 60s? It was like some type of organ trio thing or something that you played in?
I sure did. I had my own organ trio 4 nights a week in a club called The Village. It was 3 nights a week in a Sunday session in Vallejo, California. Yeah. And one day I was about 20 years old, and I'd already been, by the time I was 20, I've been on the road. I went out of high school right on the road.
Yeah.
In those days, you stayed on the road all year. You never, unless you got fired or quit, and then you could get another job real easy. You were always, so I was 20 years old. I walked into a bar to get a beer. It was hot as hell in Vallejo. Walked into this joint called The Village, and I started talking to this bartender. Had a couple of beers. We used to play dice, ship captain and crew.
Yeah.
And guys, and I was good at it. So I was kicking his butt, and we became kind of friends. And he goes like, "You talk like a musician." And I said, "Well, yeah, I am." He says, "You got a band?" And I lied. I was just left a gig in Vegas, and I said, "Yeah, I got a band," which was BS. And he goes like, "Well, we need a band 3 nights a week. Are you down?" And I said, "When do we start?" And he goes like, "This Thursday." And I'm like, "Okay." And we did so good. I had an organ player buddy that played a really great B3 and a kick butt jazz guitar player, who my boy called them. They said, "Yeah, hell yeah, we need a job 3 nights a week." And it went over so well that the Sunday session and all the cats from all over would come play. And road bands would stop in and play with us. Like one day Maynard Ferguson's whole bus pulled up in front, and the whole band came in and played with us.
Maynard Ferguson. Wow.
Yeah, it was wild. And the word got out. And so guys from San Francisco and Oakland started coming up and hanging. And then I was getting gigs from all those guys. Anyway, you know how that goes,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's incredible. Now, Mike, how did you connect with Herbie Hancock? Because I guess from there, that really catapulted your career into the stratosphere. How'd you meet Herbie and hook up with him?
Sure. You have to excuse I have stitches up here, so I'm like,
you're good. You're good, my friend. You're good.
Smile was like, oh, shit. But anyway, okay. Paul, so on these organ gigs, this dude walks in one night and he's staring at me the whole time. So I think he's a drummer because he's watching everything I do. And I'm getting a little nervous. So I go over to his table and I said, "I know you're a musician. Who are you?" And he said, "My name's Paul Jackson." And I said, "What do you play?" And he goes like, "I play organ." He didn't tell me he was a bass player. He lied. And then I said, "Well, come up and play." And he came up and he sang and played and blew the roof off the joint. He played a little bit of B3, but his personality is larger than life. And he's got so much soul, and he can holler and scream, shout the blues. So it blew the whole joint's mind, including mine. So we switched business cards. We were both young business guys. That night, I got home from the gig because this was in Vallejo, and I lived in Oakland. So I drove back to Oakland. When I pulled in my driveway, there was a car in my driveway. I'm like, "Man, whose car is that in my driveway?" And it was Paul Jackson. He got out. I just met him a few hours before that, and he had like African hashish and jug of wine. And I'm like, "Come on in." And so he came in and we got to it, baby. You know what I mean? And we became best friends that night, and we did everything together. We had bands together. We wrote music together. We hung out every night and played. And finally, I had a divorce, and I kept the crib. We had a big music room, and Paul just moved in, and his wife threw him out the same day mine did. That's for real. I'm not making that up.
Oh, wow, that's crazy, man.
See, when I drove up, here's a cute little story. I'm in his car. We're coming from a rehearsal, and I drive up, and all my stuff's on the lawn, my drums, clothes, and he laughs at me. He's like, "Oh, there you go, bro. You like that?" And so he says, "Come over and stay with me." Now, this is true. I'm not exaggerating. We get to his crib, and his stuff's on the lawn.
Oh, my gosh. At the same time? Same day?
Day, and the wives didn't know each other, so this was all random. Like me and this dude had a vibe. So I'm like, "Oh, come stay, come," because I knew my wife was going to give me the house. She had to go live somewhere else, and she couldn't afford it. So I said, "Man, come over to my crib," and he did. And we had a big music room, and it became kind of the epicenter for all the guys in Oakland. We had jam sessions every day. Whoever you can think of that was out there in the Bay Area came over there and played and hung and cooked with us and had food and beer and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, in answer to your question, sorry about that. So Paul went up to play with Little Anthony and the Imperials up at Lake Tahoe. And Paul's one of the guys in those days when we were young, he'd practice in between tunes, right? So the guys announced and he's back there practicing. It's a show. Anyway, so Herbie Hancock's manager hears him and says, "Man, this cat is bad," and says, "Come play with Herbie." So then Harvey Mason, they did the record, and then I was Paul's favorite funk drummer because him and I could do that crazy thing we do. And Herbie needed a drummer. Paul says, why don't you try this guy? So Herbie's been calling over to the house anyway, and I've talked to him quite a few times. And I went over and Herbie said, Paul tells me you play your own kind of upside down, backwards funk. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Check it out. And he hired me right on the spot. So that's kind of how it happened. Paul recommended me. And then I wasn't sure. I was really in the bebop scene, and I wasn't sure I wanted to play funky music, even though it's Herbie Hancock. So I had talked to Herbie about this. He's the kind of guy you could just talk to. And I said, well, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. At the same time, it's going to screw my jazz career up. And it did. It made me a well-known guy. But it took me years to be able to get my jazz career back off the ground because everybody knew me. This guy sold, that record went gold, and the jazz records I'm on sold 300,
I was going to say, Mike, I think still to this day, Headhunters is his probably biggest selling record. He talks about Maiden Voyage and some other things that he did. But yeah, Headhunters is big. But I wanted to talk to you about Thrust. And I still have that on LP. Man, I don't know what type of a groove, what you were doing, the syncopation. That is one of the tightest, funkiest things I've ever had. What were you thinking? What were you trying to play on that actual proof, man? That is some hip stuff.
Well, as I say, Paul and I had logged in 200 million jillion hours of playing together. So we were playing exactly like that way before we met Herbie, and everybody in the Bay Area knew it. We were known for this kind of thing. Paul played upright bass though, and he switched. And the only reason he moved to Fender, he worked at a music store and he brought this Fender Precision and put it in the music room, and it sat there for a year. We were like jazz snobs. We weren't want to play no funk. And then one day he took it out of the case and he said, play that backwards funk you play, that upside down thing. And I'm like, okay. And he played the bass just like he did on Actual Proof the day he took it out of the case. And we cooked up that thing and everybody was like, whoa, you got something here. And so I already knew, what I was feeling was I fashioned myself as a drummer in the model of Tony Williams, Elvin Jones, Jack DeJohnette, Lenny White, Philly Joe Jones, Roy Haynes, Max. I probably left a couple out because everybody's influenced me, every guy I ever heard, and all of the funk drummers and blues shuffle drummers and slow blues, all that. So I'm hearing that communication between me and Hancock like Elvin did with Trey. And I'm not playing. I can't play like Elvin Jones. That's silly to even say so. But that kind. I'm using that as a model. And so I'm hearing that type of thing, a modern way, I'm hearing jazz. I'm not hearing James Brown. But when I'm on the hi-hat, I'm hearing my version of funk.
Yeah.
So
that's beautiful, man. That's incredible.
So once you go to the cymbal, it's all jazz to me. I don't care what. Because if you took Actual Proof and you put blang, dang, a dang, dang, a dang on the head of the tune, it would much be the same stuff. I don't have funk and fusion licks. All my stuff comes from bebop and post-bop, all of it. So I play funk. The beats are funky.
Right.
Hopefully. But the expression or the whatever you want to call it, the blowing comes right out of Max and all those guys. I try to jack it out and sci-fi it, but that's where it comes from.
That's great, man. And I know you did a few more recordings with Herbie. I wanted to talk to you about this group that you were in, I guess for a little bit, that Phil Collins founded called Brand X. Tell me about that, man.
Well, this guy named Percy Jones called me, and he said, I got this band called Brand X, and I've never played any fusion before. Mm-hmm. And I only play jazz and funk, man. So I said, well, man, I don't know all that. I said, I don't do all that. So I might not be the right guy. And he said, well, man, I really like what you do. And so does Phil. And so does some of the guys in the band. Why don't you fly to New York and audition? And hey, if it ain't happening, you got 3 or 4 days in a Mayflower hotel and you can go hang out with all your jazz friends, hit the Vanguard or whatever. I'm like, bet I'll be there. So I did. And somehow it clicked. And there were some cats, some serious fusion drummers, and like, I'm like, shit, what's happening here? And but my thing kind of, you know what I did? I just closed my eyes and played to what I heard, and that got them. And so then we went on the road, and we toured right immediately. And I had to learn all this music, 17/4 and 13 minus 28 and all that. I'm like, oh man, I'm pretty much a 4/4 cat, man, and like, I'm like, wow, okay. But I did it, and it was great. And then we went to Ringo Starr's house in Ascot, England. I never met the dude, but this is the house that John and Yoko sold to him, the house from the video Imagine. Mm-hmm. And we stayed in that house, and Ringo, it was called Startling Studio. And 80 acres of land and this castle, man. I mean, and with a Tyrannosaurus looking in the bedroom window, man, like made out of some kind of, who knows, but it was 50 feet tall. I think it came from that movie that Ringo made. And you'd go through the house and you'd see an amplifier that said, John Lennon on it, or a road case. You'd be like, wow, these cats were really. And they had cooks that cooked this amazing food and parties. This was rock star kind of stuff. Parties, a place full of chicks. It was like, oh man, okay, this is, So, and the music was so different than Hancock's music that it was beautiful for me, because I was you never could possibly get bored playing with Herbie Hancock, but I was getting bored playing that music because we were doing the same stuff for 4 years, Right. I don't care if it's who it is that's playing. After a while, you're like, God, I got to do something. I'm losing my mind here. And so this was really cool. And we did 2 records that I really dug, very creative moment. And I wasn't relegated to just having to do it, because Herbie's band became a pocket band after actual all that was great. But then it became like a 2 and 4 thing. And I'm like, I'm not really that guy. Now, I know how to do it, and if somebody pays me, I'll do it. But I'm not the kind. If there's a soul singer that can really bring it on the real side, like some cat like Wilson Pickett or something like that, then there's a reason to do that, or Junior Walker or something like that, or some cat. But for me to play straight time and to talk all that stuff that cats talk, the pocket and the groove, and man, bro, please, what do you think I would? Meanwhile, with a bunch of jazz musicians who are going to play everything they know. It's like if we were on a basketball team and cats are doing layups and hook shots and half court, they're doing all their stuff, and they tell me, just stay over there and dribble, bro. It'll be cool. We got this. No.
Not you. That's beautiful, man. Hey, I was going to ask you, you've had quite an illustrious career, and you've played with so many greats. What was it like working with Chet Baker, man?
Well, this is weird. I didn't think he was, I didn't dig it. When he sang, it could put a tear in your eye. His voice was so real. This is music he would really live. And, but after playing with Woody Shaw and all those guys, quite frankly, people can get mad at me, say what you got to say, but I thought Chet, the playing part, he was, I mean,
he was good for like ballads and stuff like that.
Well, the ballads were gorgeous, man. Now, yes, ballads, and it doesn't have to be burning all the time, but and his situation also, I felt bad for him. You know what I mean? Now, I liked him as a guy sometimes. He was a funny cat, man. And he's a historical, he could tell you about Charlie Parker. He was there, man. But a lot of baggage went with the gig. So, and baggage is okay. Not my first rodeo, but it didn't kill me as an artist. Yes. Singing, yes. Ballads, yes. The rest of the stuff is it's cool. I'm not really that dude, even though I'm from the West Coast, I'm not that guy.
I got you.
Breathing monster either, but I'm not that guy.
Well, we talked about Herbie, one of the giants, and you work with another giant. I got a chance to play with him, I guess briefly, was the great Wayne Shorter. What was it like working with Wayne?
I didn't really work with Wayne. I only played with Wayne. I went to we're all Buddhists. We all chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Hancock, Buster, me, that whole crew. So one time I played on Herbie's gig. Wayne came up and sat in, and with Miroslav Vitos, we played Freedom Jazz Dance, and that was beautiful. Another time he sat in with us and we played, and it was cool. But one time, Buster, Herbie, Wayne, Shunzo Ono, and myself went to Japan for a week's worth of it was a chanting retreat for SGI Buddhists. Mm-hmm. Went over there and played for them. So it wasn't a club gig, but we played nonetheless. And it was interesting. I don't know Mr. Shorter very well, but it was interesting. Oh, I loved playing with the guy. And I would have liked to have explored it a lot further because, these were 1 hour shows. Then you don't play for a couple of days. Then another one, there were only 3 or 4 maybe. So I never got to look into this guy's soul and have him look into mine. It never became that, but whatever. But the moments we did have, I was like, yeah, I would like to have more time. But being with him, we did do some drinking together. And he would say things, just a few drinks at the bar. We weren't getting hammered, but he would say things. He'd say a sentence, and you wouldn't understand what it meant. It didn't seem to be connected to the conversation. But if you waited a few minutes, it would go like bing, and you would get it. And everybody seemed to have the same reaction I did. It wasn't, at first I thought it was just me, that I wasn't sharp or I wasn't on the ball. But everybody seemed to have and he had a way of delivering these little gems during the conversation but when he would talk about life, music, or humanity, Buddhism, values, our country, jazz, all that stuff, the universe, it was very, very, he's a genius. Yeah. I mean, look at all the playing he did. Now, my favorite period is with Art Blakey, believe it or not. I mean, there's so much soul, that cat's breathing hellfire on those solos, man. And of course, with Miles too. But with Blakey, I mean, first, maybe I just listened to those records a lot or something. I don't know.
It's a lot of good stuff, man. All that stuff. Johanna's Delight and all that stuff that they did. I mean, Art said that Wayne was a genius. He said he was probably the only musician he worked with that had 3 degrees. How brilliant Wayne is, and he's probably maybe the greatest living composer in music, jazz. He's what can you say about Wayne?
And then the records he did with Elvin, all that stuff, man, the whole body of war. I mean, oh my goodness. And then we played opposite Weather Report a lot. So I got to hear that too and hang a little bit with Joe, and whoever else went through that band,
Hey man, tell me, what was it like working with Snoop Dogg and George Clinton?
I never met Snoop Dogg or George Clinton, but they were agreed to be on the Headhunters records.
Oh,
I didn't interact with them, but one time a trumpet player used to be working Snoop's studio, the Dog, I guess, and he called me from there. He was the engineer as well as for Snoop, and he called me from there one time, and you could clearly hear Snoop's voice talking to him in the background. And Snoop said, "Hey, Mike Clark, come out here and lay down some stuff." That was the only time. And I said, well, yeah, sure. It never went beyond that. But that was the only interaction I ever had. But I'm a fan of Snoop Dogg's. I dig Snoop Dogg, man. And I don't know Clinton, but Blackbird, who was in the Headhunters, played with him for years. So I hear a few stories. And Fred, of course, I have a connection with Fred Wesley. He played in my band for
I was about to ask you about Prescription Renewal, man, and Charlie Hunter as well, right?
Charlie, a lot of guys went through that band. Scarrick, Charlie Hunter, Robert Walter, Fred Wesley, Paul Jackson. I imported Donald Harrison, Paul Jackson, and Bill Summers as it went along. My crew, and it was amazing working with Fred. Are you kidding? God, dog, you learn. He doesn't tell you anything, and I was the band leader, but you could just listen to him play, and that is a lesson right there. That tells you what you need to know about, and listen to what he says. And when you're just hanging out,
And you and Donald Harrison have a really good hookup. Caught you guys at Keystone Corner, and Donald was just there recently with the Cookers.
Yes.
Fantastic player, and that was some great stuff you guys did. I wanted to talk to you about your book that you put out in 2012, the Funk Drumming. You're also an author. Tell me about that, man. I think that was quite successful for you. Do you have a lot of drum? I'm sorry. Did you lose something?
Oh, I'm looking for a book. It's out in the front room. Never mind. Yes, I'm listening.
Yeah, but in regard to that book, I mean, do you have a lot of people that reference that book, or they come to you and say, "Hey, Mike, some really good stuff in here, man. It's helped me out a lot," especially young drummers in particular who are maybe trying to get it together, and they reach out to you or say, "Hey, man, this book has been very helpful. I learned a lot from it." Do you get anything, feedback like that, Mike?
Big time. Thank goodness. Yeah. To this day, that's an old book, and I'm still getting, yes, it served me well. I have another one called the Post-Bop Drum Book on Hal Leonard, and that's also, I'm getting a lot of good vibes from. Everybody has said that's both. I didn't go to college. I went to work right out of high school. So I'm not able to transcribe, and I've never transcribed a note. And so doing these books for me was a challenge.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I didn't learn out of books. No, nothing wrong with that. I'm not being like, well, man, I didn't learn out of books. Well, yeah and no. I mean, but not a book. I don't like. It would be a challenge for me to go all the way through a drum book. Like right, left foot, right. I'm like, oh God.
I got you, man. That makes sense. Hey, I wanted to ask you about a particular gentleman, a very close friend of yours, one of my favorite drummers as well. Your relationship with him and this program that you guys formed called Stick People, you and Lenny White. Caught some of the episodes, of course, social media, really, really good stuff. Tell me about your relationship with Lenny. How did you guys meet and hook up? Because it seems like a great marriage between the two of you.
Well, yeah, we're really good friends. God, he's my movie friend and my confidant and what have you. We talk about everything and have since 1970. Okay, so I walked in a club that I used to play called the Both And Club, and that was on Isidero in San Francisco, and it was a well-known jazz club. And it was owned by a guy named Delano Dean. And so I walked in there. I was walking down the street past the club. I played there all the time, and I heard all hell breaking loose inside there. And I practically ran to the door to get inside to hear whoever's playing drums, whoever that is, I got to know. And I could hear that ride cymbal clicking and all of that. And there's Lenny White playing with Joe Henderson, George Cables, Woody Shaw, and Ron McClure on bass.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yes. And I'm like, bro, and they were playing Intrepid Fox. No, not the Intrepid Fox. That was Freddie. They were playing an up-tempo something or other. And Lenny does this wicked dance that him and I referred to as the both and thing, where he's well, for him it's his right hand, he's left-handed. So, but for me it would be the left-handed bass drum. There's this dialogue. It's not drumming technique. It's just throwing down. And he'll start this dance, which is kind of based on all the history you've ever heard. And when he gets to a feverish point, it sounds like 10 African drummers. It's stupid good, man. And so the seats in the back of the club, the railing that goes behind your back, there was benches and then a railing, a padded railing that went on the lane, was loose from the wall. and the people were rocking the railing back in time to what Lenny was playing. Grand metal Lenny, and it was just and it elevated the place like Elvin could. I mean, whoa, man! And so I said, man, whoever this cat is, I have to meet him. But I had to leave and go do a show myself. So after the one set, I didn't even get to say hello to him. I left. I might have said hello. I can't remember. But I left and I had his playing on my mind. So I went to my other friend's house. We always went there and played cards all night and hung out. Vince Latiano, a great San Francisco jazz drummer, a bebop cat, ridiculous. There's Lenny White sitting there at Vince's house. And I'm like, oh, this is too good. And Lenny was staying there. And Vince is one of my best friends ever. He's a Sacramento drummer also.
Yeah.
So me and Lenny started talking about everything, and he was like, listen to this, listen to this. And it was Elvin live at Slugs or something like this, you know, on the whatever tape recorders we had in those days. And so we started hanging out right away. Lenny came to my gig, and then he heard me play funk. He's like, yo, what's up with that? And I'm like, well, that's the Oakland thing. And then then Lenny also was really good friends with Mike Shreve, and he met Dave Garibaldi, and he became one of our crew. Whenever he came out there, it was a hang. And so, okay, that being said, then we decided during COVID to start a group of us all old friends, David Garibaldi, Michael Shreve, Greg Arico, the great drummer, Lenny White, and myself, called the Stick People. And we're going to interview not just drummers, but all kinds of guys. Larry Graham, this one, that one, DJs, authors, guys, whatever, you know, and drummers. So we've been doing these interviews for maybe 2 years.
That's about the same. That's when I started my show too, just before COVID hit. And yeah, okay. It's great, man. And it's good work what you guys are doing. I saw one that you guys did. I think you had Stanley Clark on there. And I said, man, these guys have the same people that I've interviewed. But when I saw that, I said, I got to get Mike on. Mike is like the next guy I got to get on. And then boom, you were right here in my backyard in town at Keystone. And that's when we chatted about that. That's beautiful. Hey, man, I wanted to do a little segment with you. It's always fun when I bring a musician on. We do a little segment depending on what the musician plays. So I want to ask you about drummers. What I'm going to do, I'm going to name a drummer. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind, Mike. There's no right or wrong answer. All right. First name, Philly Joe Jones.
Poetry.
Okay, I like that. Next name, Frankie Dunlap.
Musical.
Art Blakey.
Pure fire.
Max Roach.
Genius, innovator.
Kenny Clark.
Another genius, innovator.
Yeah. Next name, Elvin Jones.
Thunder.
Tony Williams.
Sensei.
I like that. Next name, Jack DeJohnette.
Earth, air, fire, brilliance, humanity.
Yeah, like that. Next name, Billy Cobham.
Power.
Okay. Steve Gadd.
Intelligence, in natural ability and intelligence.
Next name, Vinnie Colaiuta.
Genius, period. What's to say about that dude?
That's the same, man. Next name, Peter Erskine.
Swing, knowledge, been there, done that. Intellect, sight reading, big band, small group, whatever you want.
Yeah. Next name, Lenny White.
Africa.
Next name, Dennis Chambers.
Funk, shuffle, chops, and power.
Well, you know, man, I want to add one more name to that list. I think he's a fantastic drummer, and I put him right in that class in that same line with those drummers. His name is Mike Clark. I'm talking about you, man. Love your work, everything that you've done, and you're a beautiful human being. It's just an honor to sit here and just talk to you about your career, about your music, and everything you've done. And thanks, man, for being on Jazz Talk today. Hang on, I'm about to close out the show. Well, you've heard it from the great Mike Clark. And as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.